Hi, this is the Love Your Life Show with Susie Pettit, Certified Life and Wellness Coach. Join Susie as she helps you with your wellness and mindset so you can live a life you love. Let's go, warriors!
Hello, dear warriors, and welcome to another episode with me, Susie Pettit, your Certified Life and Wellness Coach. I am so thrilled you clicked on this episode, especially with the title. This is an important episode today. In fact, I'm feeling pretty vulnerable about it because while I'm all about feeling our feelings, this is one feeling state that I still carry shame with myself around when I feel it. Plus, to be frank, I hate feeling it. Not only does it feel uncomfortable to me, it is toxic for my relationships. What is the feeling state? Drum roll. Resentment. Yes, I want to peel back the curtain on the feeling of resentment, as it is a feeling state that I consider to be a problem-causing feeling, not a problem-solving feeling. Meaning that when you feel resentment, it can lead you to some really unhelpful places. Intense anger, blame, or martyrdom on one side of the pendulum, or burnout, apathy, sort of a numb complacency, helplessness on the other end. Okay, none of those are feeling states I'd like my warriors to be in. And since resentment is actually a feeling state I find myself in from time to time in my life, I've learned some pretty helpful things to support me. And, well, you know me, I want to tell you about them. It's the name of the show, the Love Your Life Show. That's why I come on here every week. Okay, so you can be helped and supported too. This is going to be one of those two-part episodes. So make sure that you follow or subscribe to the show so you don't miss next week's helpful episode too. This week, I want to look into what resentment is, why it shows up and sort of partners with shame, why it could be responsible for your feeling of burnout, and how to begin to get out of it. Next week, I'll take that learning and dive even deeper into more tools about how resentment shows up in marriage and motherhood. Okay, the 2 M's of resentment. Fun. That's for next week. For this week, let's start with some questions to see where resentment might be showing up in your life. As the first step to change, warriors, is awareness. We need to be aware of where we're going. Maybe you're thinking, I don't feel resentful at all. Well, answer these questions. It'd be wonderful if you don't, okay? Or maybe you're thinking, oh my God, I feel resentful all the time. Let's look at these questions. We need to know where we're starting from in order to move forward. This isn't a shaming part of it. This is just like, where are you? So let's ponder these questions. Do you sometimes feel like you do more in your relationships? Do you ever feel unappreciated? As if no one really gets how much you do? Do you find yourself saying, do you know how much I do for you? Or maybe, after everything I do for you, you do this? Do you ever make critical or judgy comments about your partner, either in your head or aloud? Do you blame others for things that feel hard in your life right now, like it's their fault? Do you have high expectations of yourself? Do you think if only others would do things this way, my life would be easier? And then maybe feel a little pissed off about it? Do you feel unappreciated in your relationships or the roles you play? Like no one appreciates the full amount of what you do? Okay, think about those questions. If you're driving or something, come back to them. Go to smbwell.com/233. I'll print them up and put them in the show notes for you. Well, I won't print them up for everyone who's listening. I'll put them in the show notes. Okay, but if you're like me and most people who I've polled on Instagram, you're like, yes, if not all those questions, most of them. It's like ding, 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 that resentment bill. And resentment, I just need to say again, does not feel good. And yet it has 2 definitions. Okay, 2 main definitions I'm going to work off today. Definition 1 is it's the bitter indignation at being treated unfairly. Ooh, sit on that a bit. Okay, can you think of an area where you feel indignation at being treated unfairly? That feeling of being taken advantage of or being treated unfairly. That is a trigger for me. Okay, that thought and feeling of bitter indignation that if only they did it this way or my way, okay, could lead me absolutely to feeling resentful. Here's another definition I like. blaming others for unmet expectations. Okay, what I like to add to that second definition, the definition they say, blaming others for unmet expectations, is that those expectations usually haven't been said aloud. Okay, that's my experience and the experience of many people that I coach and come into contact with. Okay, when I look back at where and when I feel resentment in my life, these definitions ring true to me. Okay, feeling like things aren't fair and should be different, coupled with me not speaking up about what my expectations are. Okay, these two things together lead to a storm of resentment that could get pretty massive. Okay, and as I said earlier, resentment is not a problem-solving emotion, but rather a problem-causing one. It's like a dark ooze. It comes in and infiltrates relationships in a negative way that can lead to burnout, apathy, and a feeling of hopelessness. Like, I guess this is the way it is. I might as well accept this subpar arrangement with life. Okay, let's think of an example. Think of something simple. Like, can you remember when you had your first roommate, college or after college in an apartment? Okay, maybe where you felt resentful. Maybe they did something simple, like play their music while you're sitting at your desk with a book open. Okay, what thought did you have? Okay, I might have had the thought, can't they see I'm studying? Don't they understand they should be quiet? Maybe I would slam the book shut and leave the room. I feel pissed, resentful, angry. It creates a wedge in the relationship. Okay, I'm thinking these thoughts about like, God, can't these people see it? Meanwhile, back in the room, the roommate, okay, maybe the roommate grew up as an only child and could play their loud music whenever. Okay, maybe she's thinking now like, oh wow, Susie must be frustrated with her schoolwork. Okay, she slammed her book shut and she's completely unaware of her role in my emotional drama in my head. Play this out a bit and think about how I might complain to another friend about how rude and unfair this person is and feel resentment. And this other roommate is like, this other friend, is like, oh yeah, that's ridiculous. And the dark ooze begins. Okay, maybe the next time I see my roommate, maybe I'm a little bit distant. Okay, or maybe I don't even try to study in my room anymore because I'm feeling all victim-y and I think the thought that they don't understand me. I blame them. And then I go to the library to study and spend time in the library seething because I'd rather be in my room. Okay? I get back to my room and my roommate says, how was the library? And I'm just like, fine, maybe slam my book down. Do you see? Please tell me I'm not the only one. This might be extreme for this relationship, but actually it like happens all over the place. I played this out with my first husband countless times. Okay? Resentment is a sign of unmet expectations. We have the expectation the roommate was raised like us, or they think like us. They clearly weren't, okay, or won't. They're not thinking like us. They're not doing anything wrong. Until you open your mouth to have a discussion, your resentment is all your responsibility, okay? So difficult. Think of an area where you recently felt resentment. Did you feel it after you spoke up and shared your thoughts, your expectations? Or did you feel resentful because you're thinking they should know better? They should be doing it differently. If it were me, I'd be doing it this way. Resentment, resentment, resentment. Okay? And yet, you know me, I'm here to be a kind observer of your life, not to beat yourself up, to be like, oh my God, why am I not speaking up? Let's look at why you might not be speaking up. Okay, remember, one of the intents of this podcast is to look at where resentment comes from. Our brain is a meaning-making machine. And sometimes when we know why we feel some of what we feel, it gets better and why we're doing what we're doing. Okay, I'm all about that. Let's look at why we may not be speaking up for our needs, why we may be feeling resentful. Okay, for me, and like a lot of Love Your Life show listeners, we were raised by well-meaning parents who rushed in to fix our feelings instead of what we now know is helpful and what I now coach to in my parenting teens class of letting us feel our feelings. Okay, maybe our parents rushed in to fix our feelings so quickly that we got the feeling we were wrong to even have the feelings. Okay, this can lead to us feeling shame. Okay, for example, I remember complaining to my parents about having to babysit my sisters. And instead of my mom or dad saying, "Aw, tell me more. What are you thinking about that, Susie? Why does that seem unfair to you?" Okay, instead, now I don't remember exactly what they said, but I do remember what I felt, and it was shame. And so they probably said something like, wow, Susie, how are you complaining about that? You have it so good. Look at everything we do for you. You're complaining about watching your sisters for 30 minutes? What kind of person are you? Like, what are you going to do instead? Pet the dog? You have no right to complain. Okay, that's a lot. They most likely did not say all that stuff, but that is the feeling I got, this shame. How dare I? Which led me to feel bad for thinking the thoughts I was thinking, feeling the way I was feeling. I spoke up for myself. I had a need. I said, maybe I would like to be asked a day ahead of time about babysitting is maybe something. And yet, when I spoke up in my unskilled way of a child, I felt shame for complaining, shame for feeling victim-y, like a bad, bad girl. Okay, which now in my adult brain is really unhelpful. In fact, a lot of the things my parents must have said to me as a kid, I now find myself saying to myself these days when I feel resentful. Like, God, you shouldn't complain about this. You have it really good. Come on, what's wrong with you? Look at you. Which is why shame and resentment go hand in hand and why I'm doing this episode. When we think something is unfair and we don't speak up, we will feel resentment. When we add a layer of feeling bad about what we're thinking, we feel shame. Okay? If when we spoke up as a kid, we were shamed for our thoughts, we learned very quickly to fall in line. And when I spoke up as a kid, it got shifted so fast to shame. And how dare you have that thought? That I learned not to speak up. Okay, that speaking up was bad. That I needed to suck it up and just hope people could read my mind and change their behavior? That how dare I have a need? As silly as it seems, that appears to be the way I went through a good portion of my life. I wonder if you've done this too. Okay, have you had the thought they should know better? That sort of assumption that people should just know, that feeling of frustration because someone is doing something that you think they should be doing differently and they should just know? Okay, this showed up certainly for me as a young adult, and it could look like my example there of when a roommate played music too loud, or maybe someone didn't do the dishes, and instead of opening my mouth to say something, I would seethe in silence. Okay, so just looking at where this comes from, that as kids we were often shut down so fast that that's a relationship pattern we know as adults, paired with this inability for people around us to sort of sit and allow us to have the feelings that we are having. Okay, instead of trying to fix them. Okay, so sort of notice this. Notice maybe when your friend goes to complain about something, can you just let her complain without trying to fix it? That's not where I'm doing the podcast episode right now, but this is why it's a 2-part series. Okay, I've spoken before about how shame thrives in secrecy. Well, so does resentment. And when we open our mouths and speak of what it is we're feeling resentful about, it is like a balm for that resentment. The same with shame. When we open our mouths and speak of what we are feeling upset about to someone who is skilled to hear it, like a coach or someone in one of my groups, we can feel so much better. Okay, so first, compassion for the situation we're in. This is common. We have unmet expectations that are often unsaid, and we feel shame about speaking up about them because of our conditioning. That can lead to this bitter feeling of indignation and unfairness. Okay, the second part of this podcast is, how does this lead to apathy or burnout or disconnection in our relationships? Well, can you think of an area where you feel resentment, like right now or in the past? Where have you felt annoyed or frustrated? Where are you responsible for that resentment dance? Okay, look at some of the answers to your questions at the beginning of the podcast episode. This can be hard to look at, where we've played a role or where we've played a part in the resentment. Okay, but this is true. I've played a part in the resentment that I'm feeling by setting up expectations without ever saying them to anyone else. Okay, I said the example earlier about the college roommate and us having the expectation they should know it's wrong to play music when someone's studying, except they clearly didn't. Because if they thought it was wrong, they wouldn't do it. Maybe you feel resentment right now towards a friend. Okay, say she's going through a tough time and calls you or texts you 14 times a day. Then she texts during your family dinner and you have the thought, how inconsiderate, and you're like tight and stressed. Doesn't she realize I have things to do? That's resentment. That's indignation at being treated unfairly. Doesn't she realize? Yet pause to reflect on your responsibility. Have you opened your mouth? Have you asked her not to call or text? Are you being forced to answer the phone? Say you do answer and then you're pissy. She's like, how are you? You're like, fine, sigh. Do you see how possibly? Maybe that's not the best relationship building tool. This people pleasing leads to people deceiving. This is very similar to all the teaching I do on boundarying and people pleasing. Yes, this is related. For today, we're paying attention to resentment. Okay? The resentment, and then if right after you feel resentful, the shame monster steps in, like with this friend. So you're like, oh, I'm not going to answer the call. And then you have the shame monster, and it's like, how dare you? She's going through a tough time. And you're sitting here with your lovely family, pissed at her. You're awful. Okay, that's unhelpful. Unhelpful, warriors, which is why I do these podcast episodes, to shine a light on the unhelpful thoughts that we are thinking. And that leads to the third part of this episode, a magical tool that can stop resentment in its tracks. Okay, I like to think of my resentment as an opportunity for a request. Resentment leads to request. Where can I open my mouth? Bust the secrecy of shame. I'm feeling what I'm feeling. Let myself feel it. And what's the request I need to make? Where can I request something? What requests could I make for the sake of my relationships and my emotional health? Stepping out of the conditioning that I'm bad to have these thoughts and feelings. We're not bad. We're human. Okay? With the roommate, it could look like saying, hey, could you wear your earbuds when I'm studying? Right? With your friend, it could look like, hey, could you not call or text after 4? That's when the kids get home and I'll be focusing on them. There are so many opportunities for requests. It's often magical. Okay? And yet, remember, just because we ask doesn't mean they have to fulfill our request. Your friend may still call. Your roommate may still play the music. That's okay. There's another opportunity there. What I find is that feels a lot less heavy, and it just feels better because it's out in the open. When I have spoken up, I've gotten out of that shame place and the resentment. When I've asked for her not to call or not to play the music, and then they continue to, that's a different situation. That's just about like rinse and repeat. Like, okay, maybe I need to say it differently, or maybe I no longer have this dirty feeling that I'm not speaking up for myself. I am speaking up for myself. If they don't do what I request, that's fine. There's an opportunity for another action step. It's like a dance. Okay? Your roommate might say, actually, it's really important for me to have music playing in the room for my depression. That's a way different conversation than what was happening in your head when she was playing the music to piss you off. Okay. Once the conversation has started, you're on the path. You work together to come to a compromise. Relationships include compromise. It's not just you shutting up and then feeling resentful. You will feel infinitely better when you have the discussion with them. Okay, then maybe we have times of the day when we listen to music, or maybe you wear the earbuds and, Or with your friend, she says, okay, but I'm so stressed out and sad and I have to call you all the time. It makes me feel better when I text you and I get it off my heart. You get to say, okay, go ahead and call, but my phone will be on silent and I won't check it till the morning. I love you. And I know you have the tools to manage your situation. It's like, I'm not your mental health solution. I might be one option, but I am not the therapist and coach you need. Okay, you get to say, go for it. And I still have a boundary. All right, that's it for this week, warriors. Resentment happens. Let's work on not adding shame to it. If you're in the midlife membership, come to the coaching session and share where you feel resentment. Think of a specific area and let me support you. If I'm your coach, again, think of a specific incident when you feel resentment or shame, and let's get to work. Speaking about these things is the balm that heals it. You're not wrong. Keeping it in our head is toxic, and it turns into dark sludge. And then join me next week to look at specific ways resentment shows up in marriage and motherhood, or with your parents if you have no kids. Resentment is a tricky little dark sludge. For this week, speak up. And think of the resentment you feel as an opportunity to make a request. Okay? I want to tell you, if no one's told you yet today, you matter to me. And I want to remind you that you can do hard things. It might feel hard to speak up and have the request, but you're worth it. Your needs matter. Okay? It is way harder to sit and seethe in the resentment and shame. I've been there. When we open our mouths to speak of our needs, things go so much better than we expect. Try it. I love you. I believe in you. I support you. Go get them this week, warrior.
Thank you for listening to the Love Your Life show. If you want to hear more from Susie and support the show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. Also, leave a review and share this podcast with friends and family. Go get 'em, warriors.